Today I want to talk about this moment after survival. And I feel like just talking, like, telling the story of this moment, and it's hilarious because this moment for me was about 3 years. There's a lot of story, but it comes up as a story because energetically it feels like a review. And the review is acknowledged by many spiritual paths as something legit, as a very mechanical and very structured way. For example, in tarot, it's the Judgment card, number 20, and the Major Arcana. And it kind of symbolizes this stage. I mean, I can't have a better word than review, where it could be misunderstood as daydreaming or these odd things that just show up. Many disciplines actually kind of incorporate it as a practice for you to actually sit down and take this review seriously and write down how things happened in detail, what shows up in your conscious awareness in your review process. But if you're not doing it as a process, these snapshots are coming up just out of the blue. Emotions are coming up out of the blue. You're finding yourself going through stuff that you haven't thought about in a while. Well, this process is very, like I said, it's very functional because it serves as this extraction of wisdom. It integrates areas of the past that haven't quite integrated. So it kind of dots the I's and crosses the T's to create a very stable ground. And in many times, even and many times, gratitude. It develops the gratitude of what has uh, come about in your life. It brings you into this peace, which then signals the doors to the next bandwidth to open, if you will, right? Because without that stability, without that integration and embodiment, right, the extraction of wisdom from the experience, it's sort of really not safe. You would be unstable enough for the next level of energetic consciousness, the intensity of that frequency of that next level. So it's a safety mechanism. It's a beautiful, loving process, right? And so again, we talk about this in many shape or forms, right? Like psychology calls it the loneliness pandemic, and then some break it down into yeah, but it's more men, and then they're like, oh no, it's women. It's people, all many of us, and because it's more consciousness shift at a collective level that is happening. And we're all, wherever we're at, whatever stage we're at, is so beautiful to me, right? We call it different things. We call it, we engage with this issue in so such diverse ways. So I want to present the energetic perspective, I guess, on this. And it came to me in this vision, in this meditation. It was like a movie, literally, very cinematic. I sit down meditate, and I asked very specifically what it's ready to emerge. And I see this river, fast flowing river, and there's people in it, and they've just been taken by the current. And I immediately think, oh my God, it's a flood, and there's people drowning. And then it zoomed out, right? Because I had that immediate conclusion. And when it zoomed out, it was like, oh no, the banks of the river are very much still delineated. Yeah, the water is high. It's pretty much at its max. It's a fast flowing river. These people have been taken by the current, but they're not drowning. They're not drowning, but all their energy and their attention, right, basically, is in just staying afloat and staying in balance. And they're kind of like are powerless compared to the force of this river. So then it zooms out a little bit more, and it pans up somehow. And it's pointing to these people who were able to get themselves into this piece of bank of land, piece of land on the bank of the river. And I'm like, oh, they're safe. There's a bunch of them. They were able to get themselves to safety, and some of them were still wet. They were still recovering, breathing kind of heavily still. But some of them were completely dry, right? So they've been there a minute. And those people, they really got my attention because they were kind of looking around, right? Kind of like, what now? And then I realized something, that the wall behind them went straight up. So this river was going through a canyon. And it gave me the impression that the pathway out was on the other side. And so they were like, how do I get there? Because right now I'm trapped between a fast flowing river and a straight wall. So even though I'm safe, I'm isolated, I'm still trapped. And that was it. Like once I came to that understanding that the people who are dry, they're like sort of entering a new realization that if they don't come up with a solution, if there's no bridge of some sort, they're facing the next danger of extinction. I mean, it's not funny, but and yeah, so the movie went blank, and I immediately went, "Oh, I know that moment. I reckon that's the moment after survival." Yeah, that's the hilarious part. I'm like, how did I call it a moment when, in my experience, now that I'm looking at it from years of just developmental this developmental journey, whatever you want to call it, right? To me, those 3 years in this moment after survival were actually harder than the survival itself, if I were to just compare it like that. That's how they felt to me. Because see, when you're when you're in the river, you're kind of busy surviving. You don't have so much awareness, you don't have the sensitivity, you don't have the clarity. And yes, even though it's like one chaos after the other, and it's one danger after the other that you're sort of outputting, you're just kind of caught in that flow. And to the body, it's not, it's easier to endure somehow. There's always something you can point to, right? Is this freaking river that is doing this? It's because of this I'm having this experience. When you're on dry land and you had a minute to breathe, you're coming into a higher clarity, you're coming into a higher sensitivity, and you're coming into this acceptance and like I said, this gratitude where it's like, well, I can't really blame the river, right? Or I can't really blame the rain or the snow melt or whatever that caused this super high current in this river and I got caught into it. These elements just do what they do and there's no one to blame, right? You're coming into a clarity that you've never had before. You're coming into this stability and peacefulness. That's beautiful. And I can say you could even say you're healed in many regards, even though you understand that healing is just ongoing. Presence is just ongoing. All this work that you've been doing, it's ongoing. But you don't have to spend every minute of your available time self-regulating. You know exactly where that boundary is of safety and unsafety. You have choice that you didn't have before. All these things, right? And at the beginning, those things feel like relief, right? Like those people who are still wet, they're like, "Oh, I'm good. I escaped a river." Not fully getting that they're on the other bank of the river. And even though they're safe for now, they're going to get thirsty. And then they're going to get hungry. And then what? And so I'm seeing a lot of us who have overcome some things that are just, it's a miracle, right? And they're good. But now they're coming into an isolation. And I get it. This is not a judgment at all. I get it because this isolation is, and I think that's why the story wants to come through, just to be acknowledged as part of this review. We don't have to come up right now with a solution. But if you could just acknowledge for a second that this isolation, if indulged, can truly lead, if it's not already starting to lead, into some serious next level existential problems. And I'm seeing actually signs of this. I'm seeing people with this low grade depression, right? This loneliness epidemic. And they're not calling it depression, or they're not allowing it, even within themselves, to be named like that, because once you call it depression, it's like, well, now you have to do something about it, right? Like you, you know, this is a thing. And even though it could be, so this loneliness, it doesn't have to be, or the isolation, it doesn't have to be physical. You could be very much whatever, a family around you, you can have your own environment, you can have your own work and whatever else. But you're you lost that level of caring to truly be part of those. Somehow you're still isolated in your own world because, well, you have your safety boundary delineated. And I'm going to give you a silly example because that's where all these things are. The biggest issue with this space is that there is no river that you can say, this is your cause. There's no object. You are my cause. So the cause is everywhere. And if you don't pay attention, so I'll demonstrate. I had some shelves that I wanted to put up, and I was telling that to my husband, and my husband is like, "Oh, do you want to help with that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, oh, that's so nice." And just, you know, we've remodeled homes, we've built decks, we have history, working together and stuff, right? Like putting up shelves was like nothing. But I had, they're like shaped and weird stuff. Anyway, and I had this idea how I wanted shelves mounted. He he had his own idea. I didn't fully explain, right, what exactly I wanted. I just kind of expected him to read my mind. And then I went to grab something. By that time, he already drilled some holes and was done, right? I mean, we could have patched him, and anyway, it sounded really silly, right? It just started with these shelves. He got triggered. He then started to press some of my buttons. I got triggered. Once I get triggered, guess what happens? That thing now has all of my attention. And so I go into, okay, why did I get triggered? Oh, this is why I got triggered. Why did he get triggered? Oh, so this is what this is about. So then I start addressing what is really about. And let's just go straight for that. My husband was not following me into the stuff beyond the shelves. He was at the shelf level. He was arguing about the holes, about the anchors, about stuff like that, right? And I'm like, do you really think it's about the shelves? It's not about the shelves. The shelves has nothing to do with it. We are angry at each other because blah, blah, blah. So the reason why it's so difficult to stay in those relationships, right, is because literally it takes more effort to keep trying, to keep the aliveness of that relationship there than walking away, isolating, right? Not being met in the same place that you are, and trying to constantly convince, right? Trying to constantly uh, pull this other person in the meeting point where you're at takes a lot of effort. So I get the isolation. I get the you not wanting to go, in my previous definition, remain in this shallow at a level of, we're talking about the shelves. I get all that. But here's the thing. If you allow yourself to get thirsty, if you allow yourself to get hungry, then your decision making will be compromised, because now your capability of your decisions literally come from needs that supersede your rational, clear thinking. And you can easily become someone else, someone that has fought so hard to get to a level of clarity and of integrity, which then will be compromised when this needs that are becoming, again, existential, are going to compete with a different level of preference. You don't want to get there. And so, again, I don't have the solution, but there was a lesson that I got from this World Cup recently, because I was part of that group, and I do live under a rock. I had no idea that the US is hosting the Soccer World Cup. When I realized, I mean, the games started, is when I like, what? The US, the US is hosting the World Cup? Who allowed? How did that happen? Right? How was that allowed to happen? I mean, literally, I went into this disbelief, because it's like, the US doesn't care about soccer. And it's not like they're not getting the game or they're not understanding or whatever. They're just not into soccer. So to host the World Cup here, like, what catastrophic event happened in FIFA? They chose this location. This is going to be a disaster. Like, everything, that the spirit of what the World Cup is going to be a dud. Like, right? And what happened? The opposite. The opposite happened. And it was my biggest lesson, because, like, holy cow, everybody, including myself, had an opinion about the US. Everybody had an opinion about soccer and how, like, what the hell is going to happen. And this lady, she was so cute. I was watching her short. She's like, I'm English. She was very English. You know what happened last night? I partied with a bunch of Scots in an American pub, and there were no fights, and I was safe, and we were partying together, and I don't even know what happened. Oh my God, you summed up everything. Because we have this preconception that to return back into the world would be for me to let go of my peace and to enter a compromise, because that's the only way I can share this space. I can share a meeting point. And this lady, she's like, oh, I was English. I was wearing the English flag. And they were Scots. They had their Scottish flag. And we were partying together. Right? And to me, that's, I mean, it's brilliant. This whole thing was a huge analogy of this energetic dance of what is happening with this moment after survival that is now concluding in this review that is absolutely necessary. So if things show up, let them show up, and don't dismiss it as daydream. Extract that wisdom, because what this is right before we step into this participation that we don't really have a model of. The World Cup in the US, mind blown, provided the world with a little glimpse of how participation can happen, where I'm not giving up my comfort of driving these big trucks and having my refills, but I might meet you in this other place and we can drink this beer together and we can still party and we can still share joy without compromise. I'm not compromising where I've already leveled up to, but I'm not also asking you to meet me at a different level. So in consciousness or spiritual terms, there's people in 3D, there's people at 3.85D, there's people at 4D, there's people in 4.3, there's people in 5D, there's people in 6D, there's people in 7 and 8D. And the common denominator is the tangible, is the physical, is the pub, is the street, is the stadium. And if you're coming from a different consciousness level, okay, so what? You hold a different understanding of you, me, the world. Okay, that's great. And so what? I think that was the biggest thing, the biggest show that was such a slap in my face. That yes, not only the US can host the World Cup, and it will be a party, and it will be a celebration on such an amazing level that nobody could have predicted. And I'm now sitting with this in awe because people participated despite the media, despite their preconception. They found one common denominator, and I can't even say it's soccer because it's like, I think it's the stadium. Like literally, I think the common denominator is freaking the infrastructure, the stadium. And then in that stadium, people are like, okay, I'll give it to you. Soccer is pretty cool. And you know what? I might actually call it football. I'll, for the World Cup, I'll call it football. Pfft, who cares? It was so much fun. And it taught us so much about what do we even know about participation? Can we rely on things that we knew before? No. We gotta find a question. And I think this is the question, right? Because what is clear, the slap in the face was this, right? That just because I'm no longer caught up in this river and I'm not surviving, am I living? Right? That was the slap in the face for me. So it's like, okay, I'm acknowledging that no, I'm actually not living to my potential. So what's the next question? Right? If I'm finally admitting that I'm not fully taking in the availability of what life has to offer. So if I sit with this, then it's like, okay, what environment, what spaces can I participate And maybe I can even offer enough, where I can participate enough that I can discover something new. It can spark that curiosity, and I can reinvest the desire to participate, right? Because a lot of us, I think, we just gave up on trying to maintain the relationship at a level that met our needs. And now it's like, be a fish, be water, find those cracks, find the level of participation, the intensity of participation, the whatever, the curiosity of participation that will allow that joy to start flowing through your veins before that thirst takes over and that hunger takes over, and before you degrade, I'm going to say, into a different phase, masked as peace, masked as stability, but it's actually staleness. It's staleness. I mean, for at least the way it happened to me in my life. But I think we have enough proof to say that, and this is not about men and women and what it's about men and women, right? Because there's this other stuff going on, in the chats. But when we come into direct contact, we discover something else about ourselves. And so refine the question. So first, don't be afraid to name the things. Have your review of this moment after survival. Complete that review. Complete that review knowing it's just another phase. This is not, I mean, people talk about it, and I know if this is just, those keyboard warriors, but I see it a lot just in comments that I'm not sacrificing my peace. No, you can't. That's not an option. But that's also not, you can't use that as that excuse to give up and participating in kind of like a minimalistic, it's just kind of like, I'm making it nice enough for my life to complete and for time to pass. We love challenges, and I'm hesitant to use the word because it has a lot of connotation, right? I don't want to say get back into a challenge, because it's not like a challenge to prove who you are. You're done with that. But it's a challenge of, can you engage with life and participate from that stability, from that peace, but challenge yourself to find, to stay in this participation until you find that Ace of Cups. The love for life, not just living. And I remember a long time ago, I had this wave of clients. I mean, not that long ago, but in my, linearity, consciousness linearity. And they're like, I just want peace. I'm like, no, peace is just like another phase. Joy. You want joy. You just don't, you're too exhausted because you've been in this river. So of course you want peace. You need rest. You need your nervous system to fully thaw. But once the thawing and the de-icing is complete, there is this other portion. You're going into this, you're regaining your elasticity, or maybe gaining it for the very first time ever in your life. So yes, it takes time. It's kind of like a rehabilitation. You go through um, physical therapy to bring back elasticity and strength, right? Flexibility and strength go hand in hand. You have to build those two together. So yeah, it takes time, and it takes this resilience. Oh, maybe this is the question. What is worth it? Oh my God, this came before. This is not the first time. What do you find worthy? What space, what environment, or can you build, if you can't find it externally, can you build a habitat that is worthy of your continuous loyalty, where it's worthy to fight for that relationship? It's worthy to engage. It's worthy to engage your presence, because what you're getting out is this common joy that is non-judgmental of what phase of consciousness you're in. I mean, this is huge. And I literally think this is what this World Cup reflected back to me. So get out there. Get out there in the pub. I mean, many of us stop drinking for a reason. We don't have to pick up drinking again. But whatever that common area is, the stadium, the stadium is better, right? Get back in the stadium and find a joy in that mundane soccer game that you don't even care about. But that joy is so freaking contagious that you're just eventually going to start chanting. Eventually you're going to go dance in the streets. And that's the other thing. There were no cars, to my knowledge, that were overthrown. There were no buses that were flipped over. There were no light posts that were flipped over. I was just like, was there any violence? So beautiful. And we can have that as a reality, not something that we reminisce or hold as a potential. It's proven. It's proven as that was one piece of evidence for me. One piece of example. This is one way of how we can participate and move out of this moment after survival, realized as just a phase. This is another phase of growth. There is no end. There's a bunch of endings and there's a bunch of beginnings, and life moves on. And this is the sad part. It just moves on with you or without you. So, I mean, really, do you really have a choice? No, the answer is yes. Does it have to be yes today? No, but it might be next week with little steps. So anyway, I think you got the point. I'll see you on the streets. I'll see you in the pub. Have a good week.